Walls of water are tearing through Brazilian cities right now, killing at least 32 people, sweeping away homes, and leaving dozens trapped with no way out. This week, catastrophic flooding and landslides have torn through the Brazilian state of Minas Gerais, and with more rain forecast for the coming days, the threat is specific and immediate. Rescue workers are still in the field, the missing are still unaccounted for, and the rain is not done yet. The two hardest hit cities are Juiz de Fora and Ubá. In Juiz de Fora, 12 homes were completely swept away in a single mudslide, not damaged, not flooded, but gone. In Ubá, a city 300 kilometers north of Rio de Janeiro, a river burst its banks in the dead of night, turning streets into raging rivers within minutes. Right now, rescue workers are still searching for at least 38 people who remain unaccounted for. Thousands more have been left homeless, with emergency shelters being set up across the region to house those who have lost everything. The numbers behind this disaster are staggering. Meteorologists confirm that the rainfall recorded in Minas Gerais this month has already reached double the average expected for the entire month of February, and more rain is on the way. Communities already shattered by this week's floods now face the stark reality of further devastation before recovery can even begin. Every additional rainfall event risks triggering fresh landslides and renewed flooding across a region already overwhelmed. Here's how fast this disaster unfolded in Ubá. Local resident Lucas Gandra received his first flood warning in the early hours of Tuesday morning, not from an official alert system, but from a friend who phoned him to warn that the local river was about to burst its banks. At 00:07, the water was already overflowing. By 00:20, just 13 minutes later, it was already causing what Gandra described as enormous damage. 13 minutes. That is all the time residents had between the first sign of overflow and a city already being destroyed. The water rose with terrifying speed, leaving residents with almost no time to react. Picture what those 13 minutes looked like from the street. The first wave carries rubbish, the ordinary debris of a city caught off guard. Then a freezer floats past, then chairs, then motorbikes, then gas cylinders, multiple ones, tumbling through the current, and then entire vans and lorries lifted off the ground and carried through the streets. That is the scene Carolina Magalhaes, a dentist living in Ubá, witnessed and filmed after being alerted by a neighbor. What she described as horrific is now the lived reality of an entire city. Before we continue, don't forget to hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to keep you updated on developing emergencies like this one. History provides brutal lessons for Ubá. This is not the first time the city has been brought to its knees by floodwaters. In 2019, Ubá flooded. It flooded again in 2020. Residents rebuilt. They adapted. But according to Lucas Gandra, a man who lived through all three of these events, nothing in those previous floods came close to what happened this week. Those earlier floods were not nearly as devastating as the current one. The difference in scale, speed, and destruction has left even long-term residents struggling to process what they have seen. More than 200 people were rescued by firefighters, a number that speaks to the scale of the operation underway in Minas Gerais. But that number carries a dark shadow. Among those who died, according to Gandra, were people who had not been trying to flee the floodwaters. They had rushed toward them. Ordinary residents who saw their neighbors in danger and made the decision to help and paid for that decision with their lives. In a disaster that has already claimed 32 lives, some of those deaths belong to people who died trying to save others. The human scenes unfolding in Ubá are almost impossible to process. Lucas Gandra stood watching people trapped inside their own homes, crying out for help, while the floodwaters made rescue impossible. There was one house in particular, he said, where I honestly thought we would have to witness the people inside drown. He watched, he waited. There was nothing he could do. That is the brutal reality of a flood that moves faster than any response can match. As the waters began to recede in parts of the city, residents who had fled returned to see what remained. Lucas Gandra, who had witnessed the full horror of the night the waters rose, put it simply, Ubá is unrecognizable. A city transformed overnight, buried under mud and debris, its streets filled with the wreckage of everything the floodwaters had carried and then abandoned. Marcela Barbosa, a doctor who had been on duty in a neighboring town when the disaster struck, made the journey back to Ubá as the waters were receding. Everything is full of mud, the destruction is total, she said. And yet, in the same breath, she noted something else. The people of Ubá were not standing still. They were already out in the streets, in mud-soaked clothing, clearing up and helping one another, neighbors working alongside strangers. Communities pulling together, even as officials race to account for the missing, and house the thousands left without shelter. Right now, as rescue operations continue across Minas Gerais, the immediate priorities are clear. Find the 38 people still missing. House the thousands left without shelter. Keep emergency services in the field. But all of that work is being conducted under the shadow of a forecast that offers no relief. More rain is coming. Meteorologists have already confirmed that February's rainfall in the region has hit double its monthly average. Every new rainfall event risks triggering fresh landslides in ground already weakened by this week's disaster. The question now is whether the forecast rain will arrive before any of that recovery can take hold, and how many more families will be pulled into this disaster before the skies finally clear. 32 people are confirmed dead, 38 are still missing, thousands are homeless. 12 homes in Juiz de Fora were swept away completely. A river tore through Yuba in 13 minutes, and more rain is coming. The state of Minas Gerais is not out of danger, not even close. Don't forget to subscribe and stay updated on this developing disaster and others like it around the world. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a critical update.